Hello and welcome to this video tutorial. My name is Khalid and I'm going to be showing you how to actually create a website without using any fancy programs. You're just going to use a very simple text editor. It could be anything that you have, like NotePad or whatever. And basically we're going to create a website by writing all the code ourselves. So I call it hand coding it. Right. Um, Now, actually, let's just have a look at what web designing is about. If you take Facebook, Google search, the search engine, YouTube, and sites like that, there are many millions of sites like this. All these are websites. Now, websites don't just pop up. Someone's got to build them. And creating these websites is web designing. So you have creating the layout, and this is web designing, and getting them working, interactive, databases, forms, and all this stuff. This is the programming of it, so we call that web development. Now, we're not going to be looking at web development at this point. We're going to be actually creating the layout using what we call HTML. Technically, creating the layout is what we call web designing, and our focus is just on the design itself. Now, when it comes to actually getting it done, when you need to work on this, when you need to build the site, there are several options we have. For example, we have commercial web design software like DreamWeaver. Yes, they're very expensive. And then you have open source tools, open source programs like Quantaplus and Eclipse and so on. But I have to be honest about this. It is hands down, DreamWeaver is the best out of all the programs that I've used. It's got plenty of features, its usability and all the functions that are built into it. It's an amazing program, but like I said, it's very expensive. If you can afford it, that's the best way to go. Then of course we have the third option, which is the text editor. If you're using Windows, generally you have NotePad. It's not the best text editor we have around, but there is also an amazing one called Notepad++, and that's a superb one. Then of course we have GEdit, and that's my favorite simply because I use it for my work. I do all my coding, web development work using GEdit. Because I work with Ubuntu Linux and also Windows, and GEdit works on both platforms. And of course, if you're a very Linux kind of a person, well, you have this program called VI or Vim, but I don't think it's available on Windows. It's not the easiest editor around, but it's got a lot of functionality which many people who work with it claim are really good and useful. So we're going to be working with GEdit throughout this session. When you come to making a website, actually you start off with a plan, just like a ground plan for a building. Now, often when I need to do this, I just use paper and pencil and start making my layout, just sketch it out. When I say layout, I'm not looking at the entire website in its detail of all the elements and stuff. It's just the layouts, the outlines of it. And for this purpose, you could use a graphic program like Inkscape or GIMP and Photoshop. Once again, Photoshop is a commercial program. I prefer Inkscape for all my graphics, and for certain very rare graphics I use GIMP as well, because they're both open source and they're really two great programs to have. Once you have the layout, if it's a really fancy thing you've created, you could actually slice them using the slicing feature of these programs and start moving them onto your actual website. But in our tutorial right now, we're not going to be doing that. We're not going to be doing any slicing. I'm only going to use it just to give you an idea of what kind of layout I have in my mind. All right. And by the way, this is going to be just a single page. We're not going to create a 5 or 6 page website. This is just to create a single page so that you have an idea of how this is done. Right, to get to work. We're going to be creating a layout using Inkscape, then we're going to code it using HTML, and we will use CSS or what we call cascading style sheets for creating these layouts. That is to move these layouts around and position them and size them. It's called cascading style sheets because you can actually make one set of layouts, or should we say layout rules, and apply them across all the pages throughout the entire site. So it actually simplifies your task of having to create multiple pages and multiple layouts. You have one CSS file, or we call it the layouts file, which has all the rules of positions of each element, and you just simply refer that up through all the other pages that you create. To start off with, I'm going to use Inkscape, and I have Inkscape started there. Just use a simple rectangle tool to show you what exactly I have in mind. Let's assume that this page is my background to the website. Let's say it's the border of or the edges of my browser. So in there, I want to have a rectangle. It seems like my borders are turned off. Let's have that in. No fill, just the borders, right? That's going to be my top banner, and then I want to to make it a bit more easier to recognize. Let's say I have a background in navy blue for this one, and then I have a second rectangle on this side for the side panel. Now this is going to be ideally something that I'll use for my menus and stuff. So for that one, let's have these colors don't mean anything right now. I'm just going to have the colors so that we can actually identify where they are and what these elements are once we start creating them. And then I have let's say another rectangle for the body content. Yeah. By the way, this is not to proportion at all. I'm just sketching it out. It doesn't have to be the exact size. This is just a sketch of a plan I have in mind. Okay. So I have a left panel over there, and I have a body content on the right side. It's not going to be red and blue. It's just an idea, just a concept. Okay. Let's take off the colors from the body. So we have kind of a white background, a white filling there. Right. Now I'd like to make the entire width of this website 900 pixels wide. So which means everything's got to fit a maximum within 900 pixels. And once you have that, it's a matter of filling in or putting in the other elements within those 900 pixels. Now to make things a little easier for us, I'm going to have another rectangle to contain the entire thing like that. So everything goes in there. I'm just going to move it to the bottom so that we see the whole thing. Yes, that's it. I have not put a footer in here, so let's do that as well. Let's just get some space from the bottom. There we are. And let's create a small rectangle at the bottom. It doesn't have to be in a specific color, just there. And we have a footer for whatever you want to put at the bottom of the page. Now we have a lovely looking link here. Technically, so what we have right now is a top banner with blue, then a left panel in red, a body area in white, and a footer in white. So we're having the blue, that's 1, the red, that's 2, the 3 with the white, and the bottom 3, that's 4. The bottom white, that's 4. So we have 4 main areas, and the 5th element is that contains the whole thing. Now these elements or these main areas, we call them divs or divisions or dividers or whatever you want to call them. Let's just call them divs, as that's the tag name actually. They're little sections that we have, and it's a matter of creating these sections and then positioning them the way we want. I'm going to start off with the outline, and that's the containing one. let's just get our pointer out, and there we are, the one. So I have the containing element that's got to be 900 pixels wide, and downwards, let's say it could go down to about 1,000. So let's keep that in mind, and now we move on to the editor. I'm going to use GEdit, like I said, and there is my GEdit. It's in black because it's a dark theme that I've used, simply because it's easy on the eyes when you have to work for a long time. And I'm going to start off by, it is a blank document, I'm just going to start off by saving it as, let's call that a YouTube yt.html, and there we are. So we have the file yt.html, and now what we're going to do is actually create the HTML page contents, and I start off by saying HTML and close HTML. So basically the outline of every web page has got to be HTML, and there are two inner parts, the head, so open and close the head sections, and similarly open and close the body sections, body, and that's it. So basically the outer structure of my page is done. Now it's the body section that actually contains all the text and stuff that we type. Just to check if this works, let me save it. Control and S does the saving, and we go to, so we have /yt.html, and there we have the message that says text there, because it's just a piece of text and there is no layout, there is nothing in there, just the word text, right? Now we're going back into the editor. I'm going to take off that text and put our very first element, the div. Now keep in mind this is going to be my outer div, so let's put the tag in there. You open a div and you close the div. Most of the elements have an opening and closing tag in this manner. So like the HTML open close, the head open close, the body open close, and now the div open and close. Now to be able to identify this div, I'm going to give it an ID, and let's call that div outer. Okay, div outer, that's good. Now to say what kind of style it's going to have, I'm going to create a styling element. Say my styling rules come in here, and I'm going to say the div outer should have a width of 900 pixels and a height of at least 600 pixels. And to say at least, I use the min height, meaning the minimum height. And to be able to see this, I need to say, give it a border. Let's give it a border of, let's say, 1 pixel wide with a solid line, and let's make that black for now. It doesn't really matter, just get the idea. There is no background color, so it's going to be blank, it's going to be white, in other words, white. Now I save that and go back to my browser, where I refresh my page, and there it is. So I have the rectangle on the screen, this one, a 900 pixel wide rectangle or div. Now back on my editor, I'm going to have I need to say move this to the center, so that on any screen it should be centered. And to do that, I say set the margins for the top and bottom with 0 and auto on the left and right. That is meant to give a centered view of the div. So that, let me save it and show you exactly what I mean here. There we are, reload. So anywhere you move the window, the browser window, or resize it, it's always going to be centered within that page. But of course, it's got to be the browser window's got to be at least 900 pixels for you to see, meaning 900 pixels in width for you to see that centering in taking place. So we have that. Now let's move on to the next one in our plan. So we have the outer div, and in our plan we said we have the top banner like that in blue. Let's make a blue top banner. Let's create a div within that. As a habit, to make my code look neater, I indent anything that comes within the div. So a div within a div is also going to be indented. I have div there, and let's give an ID for this one. Let's call this div top. Okay, that's good enough. And what I do now is say hash div top is it's got a background of blue, and it's got a width of 100%, and it's got a height of let's say 80 pixels or 100. It doesn't really matter, you can change these things. So it's going to take up 100%, meaning the full width of wherever it is, and as you can see there is no border specified. Let's see what we have back on on the browser. Just reload my page, F5, and there we are. You'd also see that the blue is a little different to what I have on the other one on Inkscape. That's a different blue. That's because I just used the word blue, but if I want to specify a blue using a hexadecimal color combination, yes, I can do that. Say hash, and it's an RGB combination, a red, green, blue combination. I can say red and green don't exist, but the blue are 99. Let's save it and just check out the browser, reload, and you have a different color. I'm not going into the detail of creating these colors in this tutorial. Perhaps this is something we can learn at some other time. Back on the editor, let's make our left panel now. So I have the left panel and the right panel, the red and the white. That is back on Inkscape. Let's see, we have the red and the white. To make it even more convenient, I'm going to have the red and the white like this. I'm going to have it within another div. In other words, I'm going to have another rectangle like that to contain my red and white. Okay, let's move that rectangle to the back. Move down, down. Yes. So that should contain my red and white, which means once again this container is going to, this div is going to have the red and the white div of the main area, right? And to do that, it's got to occupy the entire width of the parent div, the outer div in our case. So let's do that. Let's call that after the div top. Let's say we have another div, give it an ID. Let's call that div main. Div main is going to have open and close the div there, and let's give it the CSS rules. Right. Div main is going to be with a width of 100 pixel, 100%. Yep, and a height of, let's say, minimum height of, let's say, 400 pixels, so it can grow within that section, and that seems good. And next, let's say there's no border, so you wouldn't see the outlines of this div, so we keep that as it is, and now we move on to the red div within that. Within the div main, I have my div with an ID. Let's call that div left, and this one div right. Let's close that div left, and now my right div. So div again, ID equals div right, and close that up. Yep. So we're going to put the CSS rules for this as well, for these two. Let's go there into that and say hash div left has got a width of, let's say, 200 pixels. You could even give it in percentages. I just want to do it like this, and a minimum height, so we want it to grow. If you need more space, it should be growing, and a minimum height of 400 pixels. It doesn't really matter, and once again there are no borders for this, but I do want to give it a background color of red. Alright, and that's done. So similarly, let's make the other div, the right div, hash div right, to have a width. Now you see our entire width is 900, which means you take off the 200 and we have 700 remaining. But also something else we need to keep in mind is that the borders, and as you see, as you'll learn hopefully in the future, the borders and padding, they also take up a certain amount of space, so you have to make sure that you keep an allowance for that. In my case, I'm going to actually restrict the width of my right div to something like, I have 700, let's keep it at 680, so let's say 680 pixels. I wouldn't want it to eat into the outer div, so and I wouldn't like to see scroll bars on my page either within my divs, so just keep it like that, and give this a height, a minimum height once again, of 400 pixels. And since we don't have a background, I'd like to show it with a border of 1 pixel around with a solid line, and let's make it a black border. Yeah, these colors are really bad. Blue, black, and white, they don't really go together in this manner, but just to give you an idea of what we're trying to do. So now we have the thing in place, we have the layouts almost done, but I'd like you to see something. When you refresh this page, you see that the red div is in place, but this one, the bottom one, it's gone. The body panel, the right panel rather, is moved down, and the reason is because we haven't said put it here or there. We haven't said move it left or right. To do that, to be very specific about it, let's say we have a command called float, a property rather called float. We say float this one to the left and float this one to the right. So the left panel, the left div goes left and the right div goes right. It's expected to go to its extreme ends, and there we have the thing done. Now since we know exactly where the body panel, where this right div is appearing, I would like not to show its borders because it's not nice on this edge, as you can see. So what I'm going to do is actually go back into the editor and turn off that border. Perhaps making it gray would be okay, but still let's comment it off for now. Yeah. There we are, commenting. So commenting it would mean ignore it and don't do anything about it. So let's go back and reload the page, and there we are. That looks good enough. And now for the bottom, we're going to have the bottommost section on our layout on Inkscape. We did here. It's also within the outer diff, but after the other one. So here is our footer. I would like to call it the footer. And what we have there is basically the right div, and this is the div main ending. And after the div main, let's say I have the div which I call div footer, and close the div there. It's done, and that's it. Let's just write some rules for that, CSS rules for that. So we go hash div footer, and we have a width of 100% and a height of let's say 50 pixels, and no border. That should be good. Let's give it a background color. Let's make it red once again. And that's, well, our plan had white, so yeah, okay, let's make it white. It doesn't matter. Let's keep it at red, no problem. And I'm not giving it a border, so if I keep it white, you wouldn't really see that the footer is at that place. So this seems okay. Let's save it, and back on the browser, reload the page, F5, and there we are. So we have red at the bottom, and that seems good. Now this is basically the page in a very summarized form. Just to see some sample text there, let's see in the top section, let's say this is the top banner. For the left panel, here's the menu, and I'd like to indent that. It means nothing to indent that actually. The right panel, let's say, okay, let's call it the main body area. You could put a paragraph or something there, and let's call it copyright notice. Copyright here. Okay, and let's go back, save it, and go back, reload, and we have, there we are, the top area, the menu area, the body area, and copyright. We haven't said how to position the text. It doesn't really matter, but just to simplify things a bit, let's do that as well. I want to center the copyright message, so let's put it as well inside the footer rule. To say text alignment for this one should be center, and reload, and there we are. So that's it with this layout, and I think you've basically got the idea. Now just to recap what we've done, we actually created the outline in HTML, and we created a few rules using CSS. What I've done is actually which we call internal CSS, that is, we put the rules inside the same page. But in a real situation, the ideal thing would be to have all these CSS rules on a different file, and then just refer to them, you link them. So you only have this much, you only have this part in this file, in this main file, and whatever content you want to put in comes in here. So if somebody wants to actually make a layout change, they don't have to worry about changing every page. They only change the file that contains the CSS rules. And that's it with this session. I hope you have an idea of it, and if you have any question, you're most welcome. And what you could do next, your next steps are, yes, you have plenty of printed material, you have online resources like W3 Schools, and if you need to, you're most welcome to join my sessions, my training sessions, either in the classroom or using my virtual classroom. When I say virtual classroom, I don't mean that you're going to be looking at videos. You're going to have me actually teaching you live through the virtual classroom software we have. And then we also have on-site training where I can actually visit you or your office and give you training. And also the next thing is, it's not enough just learning them. You have to start practicing, try it out. Don't just read something and think, oh, now I know it. You have to start trying it out yourself, because that's when you really experiment and experience that there are things that you figure out as you keep trying them out. Sometimes it just seems easy to look at something, but when you actually put your hand on it, you try working on it, you realize it's not that, it's not what you really thought. And of course, you can go to forums and start sharing, like we have Stack Overflow and some other places like that, where you can actually share your knowledge. And as you do that, you realize that you start learning more actually. Just for those who don't know about me, I've been teaching computer science and ICT for about 20 years now, and developing software as well. I work as a consultant. I've been building several types of software, from business systems, browser-based applications, biometric scanning and stuff like that, to medical records. And yes, the open source warranty track software is also mine. You need to contact me. You're most welcome, either by phone, email, and do be careful when you're mailing me, because I am very sensitive to spam. I mean, if you just send me a mail, I might not just respond. Please identify yourself. Give me a brief background of who you are and what you're trying to do. If you really need me to respond to your messages. And then we have the websites, and of course you could always visit me. You're most welcome. I hope you enjoyed this video. To keep in touch. Bye.